MedStar Washington Hospital Center. I'm here to give you an update on the 2 patients that we cared for after the shooting in Alexandria, Virginia on June 14th.
That's good.
Special Agent Crystal Griner of the United States Capitol Police sustained an ankle gunshot wound. She remains in the hospital. She's in good condition and she's in good spirits. Congressman Scalise sustained a single rifle wound that entered in the area of the left hip. It traveled directly across towards the other hip in what we call a transpelvic gunshot wound. The round fragmented and did substantial damage to bones, internal organs, and blood vessels. I understand he was awake on scene, but by the time he was transported by helicopter to the MedStar Trauma Center, he was in shock. My partners, Dr. Tony Shiflett and Dr. Christine Trankium, saw him in the trauma center with the other doctors and nurses there. They treated him there and quickly brought him to the operating room where we performed surgery. In the operating room, he was in critical condition and received many units of transfused blood for ongoing hemorrhage from multiple locations. He received truly amazing anesthesia care from Dr. Eric Skolnick and Dr. Scott Frank. Due to their great work, we were able to get him through that procedure, and we then took him to the radiology suite where he underwent an additional procedure by Dr. Arshad Khan to further control bleeding.
Wow.
From there, we went to the intensive care unit where he got additional care under the direction of Dr. Chadi Abwasali, and he remains in the ICU today. Yesterday, Dr. Trankium and I did an additional operation, and Dr. Robert Golden, our director of orthopedic trauma, did an operation to repair a broken bone in his leg. The congressman's status remains critical. We are encouraged by improvement in his condition over the last 36 hours. We have controlled the internal bleeding, and his vital signs have stabilized. He will require additional operations to manage abdominal injuries and other bone injuries. Predicting the length of his hospital stay is difficult today. Presumably it will be easier in some days when more time has passed and we have more information. After he leaves the hospital, he will require a period of healing and of rehabilitation. On behalf of the MedStar Trauma Team, I want to thank the special agents on the scene as well as the first responders for everything that they did for those shooting victims. We are all well aware here at the MedStar Washington Hospital Center of all that those folks did to save these people. We here salute their commitment, their dedication, and their skill. I can answer a few questions, but as Donna said, it's possible that we will not be able to answer all the questions due to privacy concerns.
Dr. Zoff, just a factual question. You described multiple procedures. There's been some confusion on
Let's check with them.
Many of us are not medical professionals. What is the fair assessment of how many surgeries it had? You talked about it going in and out of the So what's the best way to characterize these procedures and how many?
Well, there's actually a bit of semantic confusion there, and I leave it to you how to characterize. I think the reason for the semantic confusion is he went from an operation to a procedure that I mentioned in interventional radiology. Typically, we don't call that an operation or a surgery, although really it has many similarities. There's anesthesia, and in many ways it resembles an operation.
Can you come back up from anesthesia between the two?
No. The second possible point of confusion is that yesterday he underwent an operation that involved 2 separate surgical teams. It was in the same room in one continuous sitting with one set of anesthesia, but at first it was my team doing abdominal surgery and then Dr. Golden's team doing orthopedic surgery. So again, the opportunity for confusion about whether you count that as 1 or 2.
And as a medical professional, you would say, if you're reading one of our articles, the number you would say you'd like to be most active.
2.
What would be most accurate? He's like, 2.
He's like, I'm gonna move.
This is a hard question.
Well, I don't want to get too far out ahead of myself. All of us who care for severely injured patients are very reluctant in the first few days to start predicting which way things can go with all the branches in the road that are to come. Usually, the initial period is about hemorrhage control. And I feel like we've made a lot of progress about that, and hopefully that is not going to be our biggest enemy any longer. Other things to worry about include infections and other complications that come about from intensive care.
In terms of rehabilitation?
Well, hopefully you'll have an opportunity at some point to maybe talk to Dr. Golden about the orthopedic aspects. I think that we fully expect him to be able to walk, to be able to do again, I don't want to speak to Dr. Golden, but my understanding is that he will be able to walk and hopefully run. As far as the degree of athletic limitation, I think I will kick all that to Dr. Golden to answer.
I kind of addressed this a little bit already, but I think a lot of people heard shot in the hip and then were surprised to hear that he was in critical condition. Can you describe what made these injuries so severe or so difficult to treat?
Well, I think I've thought about that because I was surprised by some of the reports also. I would encourage you to talk to your military medical colleagues about what it means to be shot with a high velocity rifle in the hip region, because most of us would not even think to consider that a benign wound. As I said, in his case, the major initial risk to life is because of the hemorrhage that results when that bullet travels through blood vessels.
So it's a bleeding.
It's a bleeding thing.
You get shot.
Friends or anything like that, been able to take visitors?
He's been sedated, but we've been able to turn down that sedation enough for him to respond to his family members, and he clearly knows that they're there and appreciates their presence. I don't want to get into the details of what I think he's going through. I think that we're happy to see that he can respond to us and to the family.
Dr. Summit, was the broken leg a result of that bullet splintering once it entered his hip, or was that did that happen when he fell after he was shot?
No, it was a result of the bullet.
Is the bullet,
Typically, that's the first question that gunshot victims ask is, when are you taking the bullet out? It's quite common that we don't remove bullets and fragments, and that's the case here as well. That I have not counted, but I would guess that there are hundreds of fragments. And usually there's more risk involved in trying to find and remove those fragments than benefit. So we have no intention to try to remove all bullet fragments at this point. I think we've decided we're not going to get into too much detail about specific internal injuries at this time. Yes, sir.
Agent Griner, when might she be released?
I don't have information on that. Dr. Golden has operated on her, and I don't know the answer to that.
Only one surgery?
She has had one operation at this point. Dr. Golden could answer as to whether additional work will be needed.
Bottom line right now, you sound optimistic about recovery.
Well, you know, I like to say it's my job to be pessimistic, and so if you accuse me of being optimistic, I feel bad about that. I feel a lot more confident and a lot more optimistic than I did 2-3 days ago.
How serious of a situation? How would you describe the seriousness of it when he was first here and the risk that he could possibly die?
I would say that when he arrived, he was in critical condition with an imminent risk of death. Again, it's too hard to say at this point. Once we get through a few more days, we might be able to prognosticate a little better, but now there are just too many forks in the road and to say when the final day is. He will certainly be in the hospital for a considerable period of time, presumably weeks.
I was surprised to hear you say that you expect him to walk again, even perhaps run again, given the fact that his hip was shattered. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the main support structure of the erect body? And what kind of repair work is
Yeah, so no one's ever had a hip.
Well, you're correct. It's a critical piece of support for standing and walking. And again, Dr. Golden would be a better person to answer that question. But our orthopedic trauma surgeons are very good and they can work miracles.
He's like, yeah.
Dumbass. The fact they didn't say that's really good.
Yeah. His patience is remarkable.
I think also I will sort of stop at the really detailed assessment of each individual injury. Again, we sort of decided that we weren't going to go quite there today.
I know, it's just like, you can run them.
Never. He would never do it.
He gets a taste of it, yeah. We're still rolling.
I have not given much thought to word choice as of yet. We've been awfully busy. I haven't given much thought to that kind of word choice yet. I have to admit I find that challenging because there's not really strict definitions. Your idea of critical and my idea of critical and Donna's idea of critical
like,
are probably all radically different. I think it's sort of a misperception that those terms are well defined, so I usually steer
You and I
away
discussed
from
that yesterday.
Oh my god, stupid questions. Yeah, he's like, wait.
Deep breath, use your thumbs.
I think that his risk of death right now is substantially lower than when he came in. And certainly, whenever you think of the word critical, he was as critical as you can be when he came in. So there was no controversy about word choice there.
Thanks. Don't have a question again. That was great. Yeah. He's like, when you have an MD next to your name.
No, I wouldn't say that. It increases over a period of time. Usually, infections typically don't happen in the first couple days, but then you enter a time period where infections are more common, regardless of surgery yes or surgery no.
What do you think the next step will be in his treatment right now? An additional operation? Where are we going from here?
Yes, he has additional operations that he will need before leaving the hospital.
Is there a recuperation period between now and whenever the next operation would be? I guess I don't know how aggressive it would be in sort of that timetable.
Yeah, I think that the next operation would likely take place within 48 hours, but it's a pretty dynamic decision-making process. What typically takes place when patients are severely injured like this is called damage control surgery. And what that means is that rather than trying to do everything in one operation on day one, we generally stage the operations. The first operation is dedicated usually mainly to bleeding control, and the other types of work you have to do are staged for later operations. Infection is a significant risk. I think so. I think that's a good possibility.
What was the question?
Will he return to work in a full capacity?
It's hard to say.
Thank you all very much.
He's already said that. He's already answered that.
I think that an excellent recovery is a good possibility.
Oh, wow, good answer.
Thank you.